Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. Brent Hubbs, glad to have you along with us on this Friday. Tennessee returns to action tomorrow night against Missouri. Guys, it looks like Jared Garantano is going to be the starting quarterback. Jeremy Pruitt said on Wednesday he knows who his starter is, not going to announce it until Saturday, but it feels like it's Jared. On the surface, Jesse, you and I were talking about this. That makes sense. He's the more experienced guy, more road-tested. But this is not a place he knows a whole lot about, and this is not a team he knows a whole lot about, unlike Kentucky, 2 weeks ago, where he had the most experience against and the most success against the Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, Jarrett did not play in 2017 when we were there, for the Butch Jones wake. And
17 it was.
Yeah, he did not play in that game. That was a Will McBride game. And then last year he played, I think, less than 10 snaps. Stat we talked about right for the podcast, and I'll have kind of the 10 things. He hadn't completed a pass against the Tigers. He had like 4 dropbacks, got sacked twice and 2 interceptions, and he was out.
And that was obviously he's walking in there with the Luke Skywalker this year.
Yeah, and that was another 50 point. It was the exact same line. They lost 50. Tennessee has lost 50-17 2 years in a row to Missouri, and Jarrett did not play in one of those games and was complete non-factor a year ago too. So this is not a defense that. Well, we can talk about some of Missouri's flaws. Barry Odom still does have a pretty good defense that Garantano has any real experience or knowledge about.
Even though he didn't have experience, Rob, it does make the most sense, I think, to start Jared.
And I agree with that.
Given, and that jump on in here too, but it does make the most sense to start Jared, given what he's done with Tennessee the last 3 ball games, bailing Tennessee out. It would seem like if he's ever going to ascend back to the starting lineup, it would be now, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think some of the vitriol against Jared was
subsided
there after the Alabama game has subsided.
Yeah,
in the last few games, but and I like Brian Maurer. I mean, I think he's got a lot of potential, so I'm not down in the kid, but I mean, he's got the same amount of interceptions, 5, as Jared does in 74 pass attempts compared to 170 something for Jared. I mean, the kid's he's just mistake prone. You're going on the road against a tough defense. I mean, Missouri by yardage has the number 1 pass defense in the SEC. I don't know, if that's actually, if I feel like they are the best pass defense, but they're giving up the fewest amount of yards. And I mean, it's just going to be a tough, low scoring game where mistakes are going to be amplified, I think.
Well, and it is a Missouri defense that, regardless of that, they will bait you into stuff. They disguise stuff. I mean, it's pretty complex. I mean, Barry Odom's a defensive guy, and I mean, he has always had a solid defense up there. Now, on their better years, they've been able to play at the quarterback position with Drew Lock for years, but they don't have that right now. But he's always been able to play defense, and he's always given Tennessee some issues, with the exception of one year where Tennessee kind of boat raced him out. Other than that, he's held Tennessee down pretty good in their 7 games.
No question. I mean, and they've held, Georgia scored 27 points on it, but it wasn't easy. I mean, Florida last week had a really hard time moving the ball on them. They hit a couple big plays in the passing game, but couldn't run it effectively in the least. I mean, Missouri's got some problems. Defense isn't one of them.
Every year they're pretty good on defense, Austin, but they never recruit anybody that anybody knows about on defense.
They develop.
I mean, it's really pretty remarkable. They've always got defensive linemen who are effective.
I think it also speaks to the level of talent around the St. Louis area that really is kind of untapped and nobody even knows about.
Really? You think like maybe those guys don't camp enough, or they don't get the recognition that way because it's not just a heavily
and it's not
recruited area?
It's not covered like it is in in Georgia, Florida, Alabama.
I think it's easier for a kid like that to fly under the radar there. I just do.
So you think some of those kids, if they were in Georgia, would be more talked about, more known, more highly regarded?
Yeah, I think that's why Tennessee's super excited about Spraggins, and for him to stay 746% committed or whatever this whole time. I mean, the kid just has a little bit of nasty in him, and so I think there's a lot of kids in that area that just come from rough upbringings, and they don't get to go to camps. They're a little bit of football that they play on Friday nights is something they gravitate towards, and I think Missouri kind of.
The irony is that a lot
that
defensive talent though that Missouri has is almost all those guys from Texas. Like they've landed guys that are younger guys that, like Chad Morris was unable to get. at Arkansas. And it's the Kobe Whitesides, who's their best pass rusher, who has 6 or 7 sacks. Nick Bolton, sophomore linebacker. He's probably one of the more underrated players in the league. Everyone thought they were going to lose or have a huge drop-off when Garrett went out for the season, and he was he was one of the guys that I think Tennessee had interest in and was checking in on, when this summer when there was kind of the kerfuffle between Barry Odom and Jeremy there. But I mean, like a lot of their better players are from Texas, which is just kind of funny because you wouldn't think about that, and that's when you go down their roster, that's where they're from.
Did you say kerfuffle?
Yeah.
Hey, listen. He just hit a
Siri, define kerfuffle.
he just hit 344 points on Scrabble.
Double word, triple word score.
It's
used all the styles. Look, Rob's like, I knew that word. Robson and I are like, what the crap's that mean? But
not enough for a fight, Rob, but it's a little tension there.
When you do look at this their development, it is pretty interesting because they aren't the highly regarded, but yet they always have defensive linemen that could play. And I think that's a credit to who they are.
This year, they've had dudes on offense. I mean, look at Drew Lock. Wasn't anybody. I mean, I remember. Steve Forbes, the head basketball coach at ETSU, is a friend of mine. When he was an assistant at Wichita State, he was trying to recruit him to play basketball, and he was kind of a under the radar recruit in both sports. Who played both. I mean, and they have
Emmanuel Hall was from Tennessee. Butch didn't want
Emmanuel Hall. I mean, he was a guy that made all kinds of plays in the SEC.
The Crockett kid, that running back. Of course, Roundtree too.
The tight end they've got now, Alberto, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce.
Let's go ahead. I need you to
I'm not
come on, give it to me.
Albert Okerfluffle.
But they've found. I mean, they've done a good job of finding because Missouri's never going to be a place that they're going to go in and line up and recruit the 4 and 5 star guys and beat out Ohio State for a guy out of Chicago or something like that, or come to the South and beat out a bunch of SEC schools for players. I mean, they have done a nice job developing a footprint of what they're going to do in recruiting. Arkansas should take note in their coaching hire to find somebody who can develop a similar blueprint.
And I think it feels less like an SEC environment than any other place in the league. I mean, it's just not even close. I mean, maybe Vanderbilt, but I mean, Vanderbilt's kind of been the little brother of the SEC for so long that you expect that. But as far as a state school, it's just, I mean, they're up. I mean, they're not going head to head against any traditional SEC school and winning without some kind of significant tie.
Yeah, and you're right. It doesn't feel like a typical SEC school. They're not in the arms race with all the facilities. They've certainly been through a lot. They're going through a lot right now. While they've got some defensive talent and they've had some defensive success, offensively, it's been a big-time struggle for them. Why do you guys think the Kelly Bryant experience hasn't worked? I know he's been banged up and hurt some, but why did that seem to feel off all the way through?
He doesn't have NFL talent around him in all positions like he did at Clemson. You kind of seen an average quarterback. You can't really throw it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also all a matter of perspective because, you look at his raw stats, and they're honestly not that different than Jarrett Guarantano's. and that's a guy who, we have praised for his play the last 3 weeks. I think Kelly's probably running more than he probably expected. A year ago, folks were pretty high on Derek Dooley, and now, he's being criticized as the play caller for being too predictable, not kind of figuring out a way to get some of, while they don't have the Jamon Moores and the Emmanuel Halls that they've had in recent years, they do have, Roundtree's pretty good. He's been banged up, but they have some other young running backs, and they just haven't been able to really get those guys involved.
Yeah, I thought the Beatty kid was a good player a year ago. He's not had he's had a little bit of a sophomore slump for him at this point in time, although he's been more a factor in the passing game. So if you're Tennessee defensively, what's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest worry in this game?
I think it's Kelly Bryant's legs.
Yeah, letting him extend plays. And then, even when you have good coverage, if you can't get home and he's able to extend some things, go back to Kentucky, if Lynn Bowden could have thrown it at all, as much as he's able to move around and extend, and he's a better athlete than Kelly Bryant is. But my point is like, you let Kelly Bryant extend some stuff, then that's going to make the stress on the secondary that much greater.
And Bryce Thompson's done 100%.
Yeah, I mean, Nance is like their best receiver, and I don't think he's anything overly special. I mean, he's he's pretty good, and he averages 15 yards of reception, but I think it's stopping the run. Roundtree's given Tennessee fits the last 2 years. And then making sure he's been better in recent weeks, but maybe you put Daniel Batuli's been better in recent weeks, but maybe you put Nigel or a better guy on their tight end. I mean, he's the guy that they go to when they need a big play or when they need a conversion on third down or specifically in the red zone. I mean, he leads their team in touchdowns with twice as many as anybody else on the roster.
If Bryce can go, and you feel pretty good about Kenneth George, why not put Alante on the tight end?
Why not put Schamberger?
The only reason I said Alante, which would be good with Schamberger too, Alante's longer, bigger, it can potentially body-wise match up with the tight end.
Yeah, I don't think that Alante is one of your best 3 defensive backs on your way he's playing. He's just been inconsistent, but you're right. Physically, he matches up. That part of the game plan will be Tennessee's, I think, biggest challenge is how do they defend the middle of the field, because that's where Missouri has found the most success on offense. And although it's been limited success, I still kind of marvel at the stat that they don't have a wide receiver with a touchdown reception in SEC play.
They've become the Kansas City Chiefs a couple of years ago when Alex Smith was a quarterback.
Just dinking and dunking a little bit.
Yeah, they never threw a touchdown pass to a receiver for like the longest stretch of games.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty crazy to think about how high octane they've been to the point now that they're just having a hard time getting behind anybody and getting in the end zone that way. On the flip side, how does Tennessee attack Missouri defensively? We sat here and talked about all the stuff, praise for Missouri and their development of players. This is a Missouri defense doesn't give up the run. How does Tennessee even try to run the football in this game?
Well, it's weird. You would actually think. Now, I'm not sure Brian Maurer is exactly this type of player, but Missouri did get torched by Bowden and Plumlee. But those were just 2 guys who just kind of,
they're just single wing guys,
just playing pee-wee football and just running around. Georgia had some success. Florida was able to do absolutely nothing, less than 50 yards net. So I think we're all agree that Tennessee's going to try to at least establish some sort of running identity. But I think if you take a look at what Florida did last week, while it wasn't in terms of huge chunk play yardage, they had success flexing their running back, mainly Pirine, out in one-on-one situations with a linebacker or safety and just getting a quick first down, and then they had the touchdown. It was like a 15-yard touchdown. But I could see them doing that, but that's just not something that Tennessee has really done since the BYU game. We've seen very little involvement with the tailbacks. I had it in the PFF piece during the bye week, very little in terms of targets, almost non-existent combined through the last 8 games compared to the first 2 weeks of the season.
Aren't you a little surprised they haven't tried to get a little bit vertical with the running backs, particularly with Ty? I mean, what little bit they have did what they did do early in the year was all lateral stuff. It was everything laterally. I'm a little surprised there's not an arrow route. There's not trying to get matched up in a linebacker and
like what they did
deep or something like that.
Like what they did at Auburn last year.
Yeah. That they've not been able to do that. They've elected not to do that. I don't know how much they'll even try to run the ball. I mean, it's like you can kind of sense when Jim Chaney doesn't think he can run it early in the game. He just doesn't even try.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be a token effort, but I mean, Tennessee, I'm pretty sure this is right now. We're 146 yards on the ground in the last 2 games. That's against UAB, they're good, but they're a lower level team. And Kentucky is one of the worst rush defenses in the SEC, and Tennessee got no traction. And meanwhile, Missouri's pretty good. I mean. Sounds simplistic, but the best players on your offense are your wide receivers. I mean, I think you got to find a way to get them the ball, whether that's chunk plays or trying to get Juwan something short, let him break some tackles. But I'll be surprised if Tennessee sniffs 100 yards rushing in this game.
Yeah,
they're trending the wrong way. I mean, I thought midway through the season, I thought they were getting better. Now,
but do you think the week off and healing some guys up can trend that back in the right way, or do you think you make too much out of the fact they played 6 in a row and that's why they sort of trended down, a little bit banged up here and there the last couple of ball games?
I just think they're not that good. I mean, they're one of the few teams in the SEC.
I don't think they have a dynamic back.
They're averaging less than 4 yards a carry. I mean, I don't think. I mean, it's not like Darnell Wright. I mean, I think we all think he's going to be a really good player, but it's not like he was dominant by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't think that's why they struggled with him out.
And they played with the rest of the guys, albeit some of them maybe a little bit banged up, Wanye and stuff like that. I'm with you. I mean, I like the guys they have. They run hard, but I don't think they have a difference maker at tailback, which is why they're in the hunt in recruiting, looking for another tailback in this class to go with T. Hodge, because I don't think they're dynamic. I don't think they're great back there. I don't think they have a guy who can turn a lot of 5-yard or 3-yard runs and 12-yard runs, that type of thing.
And the thing is, in recruiting, I mean, I think T's a really solid player. I think Lenneth Whitehead's a really solid player. But it's not like I look at those guys and I think, okay, those guys are a great combination of power and then wiggle and speed. Those guys are bigger guys. I mean, I think they can get you 8, 10 yards pop at times, if they have a good hold. But I don't think they're going to be, breaking tackles and going 60 yards a bunch.
Tennessee, that has been an area that I'm in agreement. I don't think Tennessee, whether it's on the roster or in this 2020 class, has a guy that is a quote-unquote
Quandre
game
White.
changer.
He's the same type of guy. Big guy, not going to break away speed.
I will say I do think Tennessee hopes with maybe another year that Eric Gray can be that guy.
Sure.
Right.
That with another
he's just not been able to break a tackle. He needs a year in the weight room. He's just had a hard time breaking.
He made those guys miss that second week of the season against BYU, and it just hasn't translated since that game.
It hasn't. He's kind of,
and his carries have also diminished. In terms of playing time, the confidence is not there, obviously, with the play callers.
All right, biggest challenge for Tennessee in this game. Tennessee's not a favorite to win the game.
Lines dropped big time.
I think most people think that this is an easier game than what they once thought it was going to be. Biggest challenge, biggest key on each side of the ball for this game for Tennessee. You say Kelly Bryant's legs?
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge for the defense. Offensively, just find something in the run game. Just don't be completely one-dimensional, because, football 101, you're going to be easy to defend if that's the case.
Yeah, if it's, design a quarterback keeper from time to time, if it's Jawan and the Wildcat, if it's an end around to a guy like Palmer, or whoever, try to be creative, but don't just abandon it. I agree with Rob. I think, even if you only get 2 yards at a time at points in the game, stick with it. Either maybe you pop one, or Missouri has to come up and respect it enough to where you're able to get one over their heads and make a chunk play in the pass game.
For me, I think it's really Tennessee staying out of its own way early. I don't think as many flaws as Missouri has.
Don't give them a reason to get up.
If Tennessee gets down 13-0 like they did to Kentucky, I don't think they come back on Saturday.
I agree with that.
I think that Missouri's going to have some motivation anyways. I don't know how much, but I'm sure Odom is going to go into this game wanting to kind of walk out with a W, considering that he was none too pleased with Tennessee's head coach.
And it's their last home game for
last home game. Not sure about their bowl appeal, still kind of up in the air. Don't give them kind of an early reason to gain some confidence, and whether that's a turnover or block punt, whatever. Tennessee does not need to get down early on Saturday, and if they're able to kind of slowly find their way into the game, I think right now you like Tennessee's momentum and talent over where the Tigers are, but they can't get themselves in a hole.
Whereas if they were to get up early, you wonder if Missouri doesn't just lay down. You go back a couple of years ago when Tennessee was playing Gary Pinkel in his last game. When Tennessee, kind of got up by more than about 10 points, Missouri just kind of laid down.
Yeah, sure.
They didn't have much to play for at that point.
Right. I think turnovers are huge in this game. I think Tennessee's got to take care of the football, and they've got to protect Jared so he keeps his eyes downfield and he doesn't start dropping his head and missing stuff because he's worried about rush here and rush there. So I think keeping him a little bit clean and Jared taking care of the football are paramount for Tennessee. What I expect to be a low-scoring game. Quickly on the recruiting front, I know we talked about recruiting in the podcast on Tuesday. Quiet this weekend in terms of visits with Tennessee being on the road. The next weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, one would think not a lot of visits, but that's shaping up to be some noteworthy stuff.
Tennessee's going to have quite a few kids in here on the 30th for that final game, and Jesse, I mean, they're wanting to potentially look at another corner in this class. Joelle Williams was thought to come in that weekend, but that's not going to be the case. I think Tennessee's just finally punted on that one and decided they're not going to go down the road with Joelle. Tennessee wants to get other guys back up here, and that includes Lenneth Whitehead. That would be an unofficial visit, and I expect him to be in town that weekend. And then you never know who makes it back up in here. For that Vanderbilt game unofficially. They're set to have a couple of official visitors with Morven Joseph and some of those guys.
Well, and Cahill.
Yeah.
We had it in the war room. I think that this week is kind of like, right now is kind of almost like the calm before the storm, because it's going to start really picking up next weekend with those official visitors. Cahill and the domino effect of that, because does he make a decision soon after? How does that impact a guy like Desmond Tisdale? And we had it in the war room, but the numbers are going to start to become interesting.
Fascinating.
The closer we get to the early signing period, because yes, that the Darnell Washingtons and Amari Thomases are guaranteed spots, but even in the best case scenario for Tennessee, they would not know and not have an answer for either one of those guys until maybe secretly on December 18th, but perhaps not even. Those guys could just opt not to sign anywhere and just walk on campus. Now, in Darnell's case, because he will be an early enrollee, Amari will not. So they could just decide to just announce at those All-American games in early January when you're kind of in the middle there. Whitehead, I think Tennessee's in a great spot there. But does that mean that Tennessee's done at running back? Do they still go after Zakondre White? They just offered the UCLA kid. Jabari Small, is that going to be a blue shirt option as a way that you really try to get Amari Thomas? It's just some interesting and they keep things to kind of sort out.
It keeps feeling like they want to add another one. Okay, well, we'd like to have another corner. Well, you're not going to turn down any of these defensive linemen. Well, you like to have another running back. Well, you like to have another.
Well, they want an offensive tackle too.
They can't take all of them.
Again, I go back to the comment I made on the practice field on earlier this week, Wednesday. When I watched D'Angelo Gibbs just snag one out of the air. He opens up a world of possibilities to not have to take any more receivers in this class because of what he's been able to do on scout team and what he was able to do last spring in practice, and that honestly gives them a little wiggle room. If like a year ago, like a guy like George Pickens, if a guy like that fell your way, you're going to take him, but you're not just going to take one since you've got a guy like him waiting in the wings, and he's got experience. He's older. You ain't got to have to wait on him either.
But even hypothetically, you just eliminate that. Tennessee has 18 commits. They want to take 25. Just go ahead and give them those 3 defensive linemen. Okay. That's very few numbers that you got.
4 spots left.
Yeah, it's very few numbers.
Lenneth Whitehead, 3 spots left.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Cahill could make it 2. Right. I mean, like it's
and then you save one for Darnell,
and you save one for Darnell, and you want a corner. Well, who? And the problem I think Tennessee really has right now is that there's 2 spots that they want guys at that they don't really have targets for, or like corner's one of them, and true offensive tackle's the other, because they're not really in it for Chris Morris right now, and I don't think they're particularly pleased with taking a guy like Flax or Antoine Reed as a JUCO guy for an offensive tackle. So that's how that kind of ultimately plays itself out will be something to watch, I think, in early December.
Yeah, and again, some of this will start to sort itself out with official visits. Like what does Keto do? What does some of these other guys do? The first week of December moving forward. Numbers always work themselves out, right, Austin?
Yes, they do, Brent. But in this instance, it's easy to say here. I can go, they may have to cut somebody, right? And I look at it and I'm like, who are they going to cut?
Unless they're playing with some numbers that we don't know about, and you never know how that how that system works.
Yeah,
somebody can always find a number somehow that nobody has figured out. Speaking of numbers that have a hard time figuring out, Rob. What's the story on this overseas basketball kid that's playing in NBA Australia or whatever that deal is?
Santiago Vescovi?
Yeah. What's the story there?
I mean, he's just a guy that Tennessee stumbled onto this summer thanks to a guy I've talked about, Ken Macdonald, volunteer assistant coach. He was working with USA Basketball this summer during the FIBA championships. Saw the kid. Has a lot of contacts based on him, working with USA basketball. And, I've said for a long time now that Rick wants another point guard in this class. And only other place the kid's visited is Temple. I don't know if he's going to make the trip back. He's in Australia, so chances are it may be Tennessee and Temple, although, he could wait and come back in the spring. But also all he has to do is pass the ACT or the SAT, and he can enroll in January, which is what Tennessee's talking to him about. They have a spot. So, you don't know how much he knows about the college basketball landscape, but I would imagine if it comes down to Tennessee and Temple, you kind of have to like Tennessee's chances, although there could be some talent coming in next year that he would have to compete for time with, which I'm sure Temple is telling him about. But he's a guy that has good size. If you check him out on YouTube, there's plenty of highlights out there. I mean, the kid has a really good feel for the game and has played against high-level competition on the international scene.
All right. So I get the attraction if he comes in January because you don't have point guard depth necessarily. But
now, I don't think that he would necessarily play in January.
Okay, well, let's look at
I'd
this.
be stunned.
All right, let's look at this team moving forward. You got the Bailey kid who's sitting out, right?
Not a point guard.
Not going to play point.
I mean, he maybe in a pinch, but he's
Okay,
not.
so who's their point guard next year?
Jaden Springer.
Jaden Springer's their point guard.
I think so.
And-
Or Josiah.
Right.
Assuming Josiah's back.
Right, which I think right now that would be the leaning. I mean, now things can change, and
Sure.
I mean, he gets hot and everything else.
Jaden Springer or Josiah.
So they need a third point guard?
And Rick thinks they do. And I think Rick's also influenced by that because I don't know that he thinks that Springer, Keon Johnson, or Josiah are going to be here very long. Is a big part of that, which is something that Tennessee fans haven't had to think about.
So is the kid from Australia going to be? Is he a long term guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. He's not like a
He's
top,
not going to be like a one and
he's
done.
not on the same level as. Now he could be a one and go play overseas somewhere, but I don't think he's a one and be in the NBA draft.
So would they take him and a big man?
Yes,
Find a way to get a big man too.
And keep in mind, Dylan Cardwell. I've talked
Numbers
about
always
this.
work themselves out.
I'm trying to sort all the numbers out.
Is he aware that there are several Outback locations in the Knoxville area?
And he's from Uruguay.
Oh.
He's
So
currently
Australia via Uruguay.
yes.
Yeah, I love this, man. We got to get Frank Schiller in here for a full analysis.
All right, so go back to big man here. What do we got?
I mean, it's just. I think Tennessee is talking to a lot of kids, and I think when push came to shove, I think they were uncomfortable over-signing in November because they didn't want kids in the locker room wondering, well, man, they've signed one more guy than they have scholarships for. Are they going to run me off? And just having that mess with team chemistry. But I think there are some guys, Dylan Cardwell in particular, who Tennessee is going to stay involved with, and then they'll know what the numbers look like in the spring. I mean, let's face it, people leave every year.
Right.
I mean, somebody's left this program every year since Rick's been here.
So if they add two more, they got to lose two. So if they add,
They've got room to add one right now on the current roster.
right now if
Euros.
he came in now.
Right?
Well, they just have 12 on scholarship, so that wouldn't be a problem. They don't have to lose anybody for this kid to enroll in January.
Okay, for this kid to enroll in January. So
They would have to lose.
Well,
they would have to lose somebody else in the spring.
Don't you think, though, if the kid enrolls in January, I mean, obviously he's not going to come in and demand a bunch of minutes, but don't you think he actually plays this year at some point?
I don't know if he's playing. If a guy that comes in and that hits the ground in January is going to play point guard for this head coach in SEC play.
it's true. It took Jordan Bone about 2 years to figure out how to play point guard for him. So
I mean,
I get that.
he might get some garbage minutes, but I mean, I think the value.
We get that Lamonte tournament or Turner red shirt.
I think the value they see there is just that he would really be, if he's in here, if he's practicing, if he's in the program, he's ready to hit the ground running in the fall.
And if all hell broke loose and you had to have him, he would be you would have a body.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? If somebody got hurt,
be available.
yes.
Interesting. All right, what's next for this basketball team? The schedule's getting ready to get harder.
Yeah, but
It's
we'll
starting
find
to
out a
ramp
little
up.
bit about them certainly next weekend in Destin, Florida. I mean, they've got a couple of tune-up games. UT Chattanooga, I think, I may be right. I think it's Chattanooga on Monday night.
Right.
And then, boom, they'll play Florida State, who's a very solid team. And then either VCU or a rematch with Purdue in the championship of that tournament or consolation game, depending on how things go. VCU's already beaten a pretty good LSU team, so they've got some ability, and we'll know. I think we'll have a pretty good idea. But I think Tennessee right now, the challenge for them, challenge for everybody is to keep getting better. But Tennessee's got a lot of veteran people, and I think you're going to see, they should be better right now. than a team like Florida, who's obviously going through some growing pains. I
Right.
would caution Tennessee fans not to get just fat and happy about how the Gators are
Or
struggling.
Kentucky, who's going through growing
Yeah,
pains.
I mean those teams will be a lot better when Tennessee plays them in conference play.
So Tennessee should be better out of the gate right
I
now
think
because of their experience in the backcourt.
And even though Fulkerson and Pons are in new roles,
But they've played.
They've been here. 3 years, 4 years in Fulkerson's case. So I think you should expect Tennessee to be, to know what they're doing, and they'll get better as James gets better, as Camwa gets better. But I don't know that their ceiling is as high as some of these other teams. So they need to make hay, right now. And also, just while we were taping this podcast, Tennessee got some big news, and that James Wiseman is going to be eligible, but not until January 12th. So
the Vols don't.
little luster came off that Memphis game.
I mean, a lot of
That'd be
people
good.
with balled up fist in Tiger High
I
gear,
can't
right?
wait. That's going to be a show. But anyway, pretty tough non-conference schedule. I mean, Memphis has still got tons of talent. So and then Tennessee's going to play on the road at Cincinnati, December 18th. Wisconsin, they're not nearly as good as they have been in years past, but they're solid. So Tennessee's going to have some tests. If they hit conference play with 2 or 3 losses, I think they will have done very well.
You're surprised that some people have been a little bit critical of Barnes, saying that they're not going to renew the Memphis series?
Not in the league. Well, I'm not surprised some people have been critical, but I'm not.
You said a year ago,
I said
it wasn't going to happen.
Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock after that game was over a year ago in Memphis. That forget about it. He will never play the series again. And I don't blame him.
It benefits Memphis much more than it benefits Tennessee to play because Tennessee can get a home and home with whoever they want.
I totally get. I get why fans like it. I totally get that.
Right.
I mean, and this arena will be rocking, but it doesn't. It doesn't help Tennessee to play one of the best teams in the AAC. Are you kidding me? I mean, it helps. It helps Memphis.
Right.
And people are talking about recruiting. Tennessee has never ever in the 20th century signed a kid out of Memphis that Memphis wanted. Hasn't happened.
That's true. I can't think of one.
And they played Memphis a lot. So how much benefit have they gotten recruiting? Tell me.
Yeah. Again, I'm with you. It benefits Memphis a lot more. By the way, hats off to the VCU AD and their administration. I love this. You know the story in their contract? You know why LSU played there?
Oh, they made Will Wade do that, right? When he took the job?
Everybody who's left there to take a Power 5 job, part of the stipulation when they leave is they have to have a home and home with VCU at their next job within 3 years of being there. Same thing happened with Anthony Grant.
Kind of a break on the buyout, right?
Right. So Anthony Grant takes Alabama up there two years after he leaves VCU, and that's why Will Wade played up there.
Shaka go back up there?
Yeah, Shaka played up there. He took Texas up there, and that's why they do it. Hats off to. I give
That's
the administration credit for
And speaking
moving around, beating the agent on something a little bit, if you will.
of LSU, and this is kind of off topic, but it's been a rough start for the SEC in basketball.
Has
When
been
you
really
talk about RPI and everything, I think these teams are going to be a lot better because they got so many young guys. But LSU loses at VCU, Florida a trash loss to UConn at home the other day. They lost to Florida State. There's not a lot of shame in that. But then Kentucky loses to Evansville.
And had a really close game. Was it with Utah State
Alabama
or Utah somebody?
loses to Penn. South Carolina loses to Boston University. Some tough hits in the first couple weeks of the season.
Not going to be great for the ORPI quality win measurement when you get to the end of the year. That's for sure. So plenty of basketball coming up. Recruiting will heat back up, as Jesse and Austin said, starting next week with the official visits, and then everything rolling into December. But on the forefront right now is this football team taking on Missouri, and an opportunity to get to bowl eligibility Saturday night in Columbia against the Tigers. That's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us.